So the last line we read was, his march now soared into an eagle's flight. It's as if the image of power and light, because that is a bird that is unafraid of the light of the sun, to move continuously straight, fearlessly into the light. This is the change that took place in the king, in the yogi. Out of apprenticeship to ignorance, wisdom upraised him to her master craft and made him an arch-mason of the soul. Out of apprenticeship to ignorance. It's a strange image, but so true. We not only grow out of ignorance, that is the world in which we are, and we learn slowly to progress from darkness to light. Apprenticeship is a period during which one learns. In the olden days, in the Middle Ages, when there were craftsmen, whatever the craft may be, whether you're a mason or a tailor or a painter, you don't go to a school to learn. You learn from a master. So you go to a master tailor or a master mason or a master whatever, and you work with him, you see him work, and you learn. In the beginning, naturally, you don't know anything, so you make mistakes. Gradually, you acquire the mastery, the training, and those young men who went through that training were called apprentices. Apprentices.
But to ignorance?
Exactly. So, apprenticeship to ignorance, what does that mean? Do you learn through your mistakes?
Okay. Yeah.
You learn through error, darkness, failure, falsehood. They become schools, which it's a hard school. You learn through suffering. You learn through difficulties. It doesn't come automatically that you move straight upwards. You move, you fall, you fail. This is the way the human nature proceeds. We are here to progress, but nothing moves in a straight line. We go up, we come down. You learn sometimes, or we fail to learn even after we have made the same mistake 50 times. We continue because of human nature. There is the downward pull which is very strong. So the downward pull is there, the upward aspiration is there, and so there is this kind of, you might say, a kind of a tug of war. So this is the way the human individual slowly moves, if at all, forward. But
What do you mean, if at all?
Sometimes I mean, it was just that, because
No,
problem,
if at all.
I hope so.
According to who? The divine hero is
It's not as if we do evolve in consciousness in every birth. We should, but we don't. Because we have to fight our own enemies, we contain them inside ourselves. There's something that within us is asking to, the truth, the light, what is perfect, and something that is inert, that is resistant, something that is almost positively unwilling, hostile. We have all these elements in our nature. And it is, in the end, this is perhaps a gain, because when we have been able to take up all the different parts of the being, each part of the being has its own nature, has its own character, has its own temperament. You have a vital that is of a particular nature, which is not the same every day, that also keeps very changeable. You have a mind that is sometimes very sure of itself, though it doesn't really know the whole truth ever. You have a body that is accepts its weaknesses because this is how we are made. There is the subconscious, there is the unconscious. There are all these different elements. When they can all be offered totally to that one aspiration towards the divine, it's a very long task. It may take lives. That's why we don't necessarily progress just like that. Unless you have worked on your being. Unless that work, tapasya that you have done in this being as he has done, as Sri Aurobindo has mentioned in the case of certain yogis, that this must have been the result of many earlier lives. When one has made an effort over a long time, the time allotted to each of us is not always sufficient. Though it can be done, as Mother says, now you can do it much faster because I have brought down that consciousness. You can do it much faster. Otherwise, it used to take lives. A very strong concentration of effort is what is tapasya. It can be done in one life. But then you do that to the exclusion of everything else. You exclude yourself from all other activities and you only want to move towards the light. But then you don't transform your vital, you don't transform your physical. It's only the higher part of your nature that goes towards the divine. But what about the lower part? They are created also by the divine. Not just to be thrown away, not to be rejected. They have to be worked on. And that is very slow, very long. It's a long drawn out process. So this is why the human being is an apprentice to ignorance. Not only are we ignorant and we try to move towards the light, but ignorance becomes a teacher. Suffering is your teacher. Trains you. Tells you slowly that this is like in your body, you make a wrong movement and you get hurt. And then you know, I should not have taken this step or moved in this manner. Now I have pulled a muscle or I've torn a ligament. It has taught you, though it's a painful process. Well, it's much worse in the other parts of the being because the body is much more innocent. It accepts. The vital does not. The mind does not. It tries to find explanations, justifications, all kinds of excuses. All these things, they say, no, there's nothing wrong. Everybody else is doing this. Why should I not do this? All kinds of different explanations we put forward. That is our problem. To some extent, the body does not make all this drama. It can't. It accepts. But the vital does not accept. It has a big ego. The mind has an even bigger ego because it thinks it understands everything. That's the reason why we don't. We should. We could.
But there's a higher vital in there too. Right?
There is a higher vital also. Yes. Thank you. Because without the vital you cannot do anything.
Right.
It is the seat of all energy. But to be able to master this energy and channelize it in the direction that you want to finally reach, even if it is not the divine, any goal you want, you have to have a certain channelizing of your energies. Only then you reach the goal. So out of apprenticeship to ignorance, wisdom appraised him to her master craft. The word craft associated with the word apprentice. He becomes one who is an embodiment of the mastery of wisdom. This is the sage, this is the rishi, and made him an arch-mason of the soul. This is a very extraordinary image because the soul and the word mason, when you say mason, you associate it with something that is made of substance, solid material substance. This is as if the soul is manifested in the body. The spirit manifests in the body, then the whole being becomes a building of the soul, you might say. This is what we don't. We have, even those who really have an aspiration, usually withdraw as much as possible from external activities of the body and concentrate on their inner meditation, concentration, all these things. But to be able to transmit that aspiration, concentration, meditation in the activities of the body, that is when the whole being, physical as well as vital as well as mental, becomes an expression of the spirit. This is the yoga of Sri Aurobindo. This is much more difficult. The earlier yoga was not easy, no doubt, but this is far more difficult, and which is why it is called the integral yoga. You take up all the parts of your being and manifest that perfection, that divinity through every part. Like a beautiful building. It's not just a building. If it is a beautiful building, it is a transmission of the vision of the architect, who has a vision of beauty, of a certain harmony, which is also there. It's not just a house. A house that has no spirit is not a house. It has to have a spirit. In the same way, our outer nature also has to transmit that spirit. So this is what made him a builder of the immortal's secret house. The secret house is inside you. To build it on the outside. Like the architect has a vision, and then he puts that vision into expression in the form of a house. But he has to start with a vision. Within us also there is a secret, you might say, source of vision, of knowledge. If we can relate to it, often we don't, but the seeker does. He's made the effort to get in touch with that inner source of light, of truth, of divinity that is within. He has made that effort and then transmits it in his body, in his action, in his words, in his activities, in his feelings, in everything. Then he becomes a builder of that house. An aspirant to supernal timelessness, freedom and empire called to him from on high. He was no longer bound by the lower being that is trapped in ignorance. That is freedom. Freedom truly is when one is free from ignorance. Free, only the Supreme who is, you can say, is truly free. Otherwise we are conditioned by everything, all the weaknesses in our nature. We may think we are free, but we are not. Only the one who is the Supreme, therefore empire, mastery, is not subjected to anything. Like the word independence, independent person is a person not dependent on any condition. This is what called to him from on high. This is the goal that he finally has to reach. Above, he has not yet finally fully arrived at that highest level of consciousness and mastery, but he perceives that it is the goal, it is the ultimate truth of our existence. Above mind's twilight and life's star-led night, there gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day. So you have night, twilight, dawn, day. Star-led night in our world of life, which is often the vital controlled by the world of ignorance and the lower nature. There is the moments of opening to something more luminous. There is, as you say, the higher vital. There are flashes of connection that we can have with some higher world of energy and beauty and love and joy, like the stars that shine in the darkness. It's not that we are totally in the dark. And above that is the world of mind. Mind is a world that is an instrument of light, no doubt. Mind is something that is asking for knowledge, asking for truth, but its definition or its functioning is always based on division. Truth versus falsehood, right versus wrong, high versus low. This is what the mind does. It makes definitions, it makes divisions. If this is this, it cannot be that. The opposites are always, the term opposite means that they are in opposition to one another. So that problem is there in the world of mind, and yet because the mind is an instrument of light, the vital does not claim to be an instrument of light, but the mind does. So it has this sense of superiority, a clear mind. But the clear mind thinks it knows. It knows only as much as it can see. My mind can see this much, it can understand and grasp just this much, so this much alone is true. My mind doesn't have a spherical vision. I cannot see everything on all sides. Therefore, my knowledge is incomplete, always incomplete. It's very typical. The human eye sees only this much. It has a little lateral vision and that's all. It cannot see what is behind. And you can be envious of the fruit fly, it can see in all directions. Its eyes can go in all directions. Mine can't. So,
Is that the supermind?
no, maybe it's not
We have our
interested.
eyes on the top of the head.
There are certain insects, but I mean, it doesn't want perhaps to know the supermind. But this sense, it has no sense of superiority, which my mind has. I think I understand better than you. What I have understood is right, what you are saying is wrong. This is why there are arguments and quarrels and all these difficulties between one person and another, particularly the so-called learned people. I hope I'm not, but anyway. But this is the whole thing, the twilight. There are two twilights. There's one twilight that leads to night. There's one twilight that leads to day. And this is exactly what mind is. There's one part of the mind that takes us into error. And you can even justify error by all kinds of explanations. And the other is that which opens us, leads us to that sense of, even if I can say I have not understood, I am not capable of understanding the whole thing as long as I take my stand on the mind. That is already a beginning. That I cannot know everything. I have to become other. I have to become different. I have to break out of this reliance only on the mind and my mental understanding. So this is what can prepare the mind, if it can accept its limitation, prepare it to opening itself to something else. Otherwise, I fall back like there is the twilight that leads to night. So here he hasn't qualified which it is, mind's twilight. Because this is the book of beginnings, it is the symbol dawn. This book. So above mind's twilight and life's star-led night, there gleamed the dawn of a spiritual day. So there is night, twilight, dawn, day. And this is an image that he uses throughout the poem. The different times of the day at different levels of consciousness, different openings to light. But they are not in opposition to one another. That is the wonderful thing. Night prepares day. Twilight prepares dawn. So they are like stepping stones. We are moving from one stage to another. This is evolution. In Sri Aurobindo, there is always in the background, the notion of evolution, rising from one stage to the other. And evolution cannot happen unless there is an involution that precedes. So in the night, there must be a hidden day, which is why night slowly opens onto the day. So in the human, there must be a hidden divine, which is why gradually the human can change into becoming what he essentially is. And this is what takes time. Over thousands of years, we can become that. Or if you are a seeker, you can do it in a very relatively short time, which is why Sri Aurobindo describes yoga as accelerated evolution. By yoga, it doesn't mean standing on your head. It is, you accelerate the process of development of consciousness by conscious effort and your choice, your will. You want to do it, and if you want to do it, you can do it in a single-minded manner. The whole principle in the yoga of Sri Aurobindo is, first there is involution, which makes evolution possible. And so you have this wonderful line that follows. As so he grew into his larger self, humanity framed his movements less and less. So it is as if he had this greater self within. We all have this greater self within us. But we don't grow into that. We have to grow into that greater being that is hidden. It is almost paradoxical. The hidden being is vaster than the surface small being. We have to grow into that vaster being. And so we can grow out of our ordinary human divided, limited nature and become an expression of that inner being that we already are. And that is what exactly the sentence Mother has said in one of her last talks. It is very simple. We have to become what we already are. We already are that. And that is the whole difference between becoming and being. We are that, we have to become that. There is a gap between being and becoming. This is what, it is the yoga of Sri Aurobindo himself that he is describing. Humanity framed his movements less and less. A greater being saw a greater world. Naturally, it's like a whole process of ascension. If you ascend, your range of vision is much vaster. You see much further. If you stay close to the ground, you see only very little. So he is growing. His consciousness is rising. His vision becomes vaster. It becomes all-inclusive. And that is what is special. Sri Aurobindo is always all-inclusive. He doesn't exclude. Mind is exclusive. We exclude something, we accept something, we say this is good and this is not. And it is all right at a certain stage when we find ourselves at that level. But as we rise, we realize that there is a purpose in everything. The totality is created by that one divine, and it is He that is in all things, making all things. And so that greater being sees another manifestation, another creation, which can become an expression of that original divine plan. Must have had a plan to start with, and then slowly, you, like the craftsman or the architect, he has a plan, and then that plan is put into execution, and it takes time. We have to move towards that final perfection. That perfection pre-exists. That plan has to be there, the end and the goal is already there, and we have to slowly make our way towards it. There are hindrances, there are difficulties, and they don't only come from outside, they may come from around us, they come from within us, they come from every direction, but it is ultimately an expression. Every difficulty is an opportunity to break out of a limitation, to break out of a weakness, which is why ignorance becomes a teacher. So again, a fearless will for knowledge. It's a beautiful, unusual image. To have a fearless will for knowledge. Dare to erase the lines of safety reason draws that bar mind's soul's dive into the infinite. There, reason draws lines, saying this is reasonable, this you can try. Don't attempt the impossible, it is not reasonable. Reason keeps on making barriers. Stay within your limits, do the best you can within the limits, don't be over ambitious. Reason will say all kinds of explanations, but it is reason that bars. Reason is supposed to lead me up. Reason will stop my rising, my climb continuously beyond. It is when I have to break out of the ceiling. Reason is like a ceiling or a sky. You have to go beyond the sky into the upper stratosphere. There are different. That is why also in the Indian tradition you have gods on different levels, and the god of the sky is Indra. He is a lesser god. He is not the highest god. There are other gods beyond, to whom Indra has to finally bow. But he is the king of the world, because mind rules the world of life. So, for that you have to break out of things that reason says this should be done, this should not be done. A fearless will for knowledge. Dare to erase. Now he is also a warrior. He has to be fearless. This, one of the things that Mother also describes, a yogi. A yogi has to be a hero. He has to fight. He has to fight against himself. He has to fight against all oppositions, all difficulties that come. Because each time there is a need to go forward, there will be always things that will pull us back. The more you wish to go up, the more the climb becomes steep, difficult, dangerous. You climb a tall mountain, it is much more difficult than climbing a small staircase. But those who dare, they are the heroes. In the world of the spirit, it is the same thing. Those who dare the ultimate realization, not simply a lesser one of just finding the connection with the divine, that's a start. But to become divinized totally, and how to do it? What should we break out of? Complete, you have to rule out inconscience, you have to completely wipe off ignorance. And these are very, very ancient enemies. They have been there for a long, long time. You have to battle your own enemies. You have to be fearless. So you read you might say even the life of Sri Aurobindo, and you find that there was such a pressure of inconscience that fell on him. of darkness. He had to fight his own way. Battles are not always against somebody in front of you, it's also someone within you. There are forces that come, it is as if they are being threatened. These dark forces are being threatened. Each time you want to climb into a world of greater light, the world of darkness feels that it's losing hold over you. They control us and they don't want to let us go. So error and darkness, they are our masters. You have to break out of that. It is difficult. You have to accept that it will be painful and difficult, and you are not to be afraid. So therefore, reason says, minds soar, souls dive. In the spiritual life, you might say that the deeper you go within, the higher you climb. The dimensions are different. The depths and the heights are bridged. They are not opposed to one another. Otherwise, in the mental world, the depths and the heights are opposed to one another. What is below is not what is above. But you go deeper and deeper within, you go higher and higher above. It's the same thing. So souls dive into the infinite. The infinite is inside us. And the infinite is above us. The infinite is around us. But we are shut in our little wall of egos. And we feel safe within the wall of that ego and say, I am this person. And I like this person, which is me. And I have to lose myself and become that which is above, beyond the Supreme. And the Supreme is inside also. So I have to break out of this dependence and attachment to the ego. I have to break that wall. And that is also one of the most important aspects. So this is what he attempted. Even his first steps broke our small earth bounds and loitered in a vaster, freer air. Now here he gives you the different experiences. It's not that the whole transformation and the change comes totally at the same time. It's progressive. But even the first steps are the breaking down of the boundaries that mind have made. So there are flashes of vision, there can be flashes of intuition, there can be connection with beings sometimes, contacts with other forces. It is not that he becomes changed completely, but if we attempt to do this yoga, we become aware that we are not limited to our little self as we are. We have the ability to get in touch with forces, beings, contacts. There is a grace that is always there at work. If I can open to that grace, there is a light, there is a love. The universe cannot be if that divine love and grace were not there. So, even his first steps broke our small earth bounds. We need boundaries. Like a small child, when he learns to walk, he doesn't walk across the globe. He walks a little. He can't walk long. And he can't walk far. But he can eventually walk further and further. He can slowly grow out of his, not childhood, but acceptance of his incapacities. He can be a child of the eternal and express eternity and infinity. That is different. Otherwise, this sense of feeling safe because we live within the limits of It makes us feel secure. Limits make us feel secure. And we need security for a long time. To be able to break this sense of dependence on external security, limitation, rules, laws. In the mind you make your own rules and your laws and your sense of standards. These are all the things that keep us, not just physical boundaries, moral boundaries, mental boundaries. All these are helpful at a certain stage, until you find that you have to break out of it. You have gone to another stage, you don't need those laws anymore. You have to come to a point where you say, I don't require this anymore, I have outgrown it. So this is what he is doing, he is breaking out of the boundaries. And he is moving in a vaster world, in a vaster, freer air, atmosphere, world, where those sense of fixed limits are no longer so strong. A few laws may still be there, they will slowly be replaced by others. For a long time, we replace one law by another, until we can finally remove all dependence on all laws. It's a very slow journey. So he uses the verb loiter, as if it's just moving freely. There is no fixed reason for moving in a particular direction. He's moving without aim, without purpose, but just as if the path, the fixed roads that had been drawn in front of him are no longer there. But the goal, the ultimate final goal, is not yet there also. In hands sustained by a transfiguring might, he caught up lightly, like a giant's bow left slumbering in a sealed and secret cave, the powers that sleep unused in man within. The main sentence is, he caught up the powers that sleep unused in man within. Deep within us, there are forces, there are powers, there are strengths, there are abilities that remain unused in us. He uses the image of the bow because it's an instrument of power. Knowledge is power, because this is the yoga of the seeker of knowledge, but knowledge is power. How does one draw those powers out into the open? Those forces are there in deep within us. The divine, the eternal is within us. That is the ancient Indian image, that there is a cave behind the heart. That is where the presence of the divine is lodged. Hridayasya guhayam. Guha is the cave. Deep within that cave, which is the psychic center. It is an embodiment of the divine consciousness. To bring it out into the open and manifest it is the purpose of the realized yogi. This is an image which is used sometimes in Indian mythology, and I think also in Greek, the story of Odysseus also, the power and control over the bow. You have to bend the bow. You have to have the story of Rama, for instance, to be able to lift a bow which nobody else can lift except the one who is in conscious control of his nature. So it is the bow of Shiva, which he could lift, or is it Vishnu? Shiva, is it? Maybe wrong, I read it long ago. So it is simply a divine force which only a corresponding divine being can raise. Within us there is this force to be able to move that bow, you have to be also an embodiment of the divine. Otherwise you can't. This is, here he has used that image which is very popular in the Indian mythology. In hands sustained by a transfiguring might. So it is as if his being is supported, is helped by the divine force. We are by ourselves, we are nothing. When the ego is gone, you know that I am nothing. It is the divine who is everything. When that sense of, as if I lose myself in the divine, it is because he is there that everything can exist. In those hands, sustained by that kind of might, he caught up the powers that sleep unused. You see, that is the sad part. We have all these forces of transformation, of divinization, but we don't bother because the mind says all this can't be done. You are a human being, you are not a god. If you want to become a god, you have to stop being a human being. You have to give up your humanity and you enter into divinity. It's always one or the other. But the divinity is hidden in the human. But we don't use it. We don't make the most of our possibilities. In each person there is the possibility of perfection. And yet we identify ourselves with our imperfections, with our limitations. He did not. And he caught up lightly because he was not the one who is the author of his actions. He has surrendered himself to a greater power. And it is that power that helped him to raise those powers, that forces that remain slumbering in the heart's cave. They are unused. And that is why he made of miracle a normal act. What is a miracle? A miracle, can you explain? A miracle is what is not rational, what you can't explain with reason. But when you realize that reason doesn't know much and can't see far, it can break the laws of reason. Or you can say, everything is a miracle. The universe is a miracle. Man is a miracle. Existence is a miracle. Every change is a miracle. And that is also a line in Savitri. All's miracle here. And can, by miracle, change. Therefore, we can all be changed. Because we are all expressions of the divine. But we have to choose. We have to want. That's the only condition.
Law.
We have to want. Want only that. He made of miracle a normal act. So it is as if normally we put miracle and normal in opposite camps. What is normal is not miraculous. What is miraculous is abnormal. There is nothing abnormal. Everything is miraculous. And turned to a common part of divine works, magnificently natural at this height, efforts that would shatter the strength of mortal hearts. You see, the way he writes his sentences, you have to read on. He turned to a common part of divine works, efforts that would shatter the strength of mortal hearts. The efforts that the average human rational being would be incapable of even trying or dreaming of doing, he made that seem natural. To do that which is almost incredible or impossible was what he attempted and made natural. It reminds me of a name mother had given to a group of young gymnasts way back in the 40s and 50s, conquering the impossible. It's that. There is nothing that is impossible. We have to conquer. Impossible is a word which our sense of security and limitation has coined, and you live within the possible. He broke out of that and made the impossible seem natural. Magnificently natural. To do wonderful things without really, as mother says, beat of drums. There's a New Year prayer, isn't it? There is no need for the beat of drums to announce the birth of a new world. A new world is born, and it doesn't have to have any show, anything. And that is really royalty, mastery, kingship. It's a kind of natural, as if you are naturally born on the heights. To be superior, not because you have the sense of above the others, but we belong to the world of the heights. We belong to that world of perfection. When we can relate to that, it becomes magnificently natural, the heights. Efforts that would shatter the ordinary human mentality and heart, pursued in a royalty of mighty ease, aims too sublime for nature's daily will. The gifts of the Spirit, crowding, came to him. They were his life's pattern and his privilege. So these are the things that he really seemed to acquire. Progressively, the changes, the realizations, the masteries that came to him, he called them the gifts of the Spirit. Crowding. A gift comes unasked. You don't have to earn it, it comes. They came of their own because he was ready for it. They were his life's pattern and his privilege. Now we'll begin descriptions of the gifts of the Spirit. First of all, a pure perception lent its lucent joy. Perception is not only seeing, it is also to recognize what is behind what you see. I see you, I perceive what you are. If I have that vision, I don't only see the surface, I see what is behind the surface. So there is knowledge. There is a kind of you might say, can't call it wisdom, but a capacity to go deeper behind the surface vision.
Identity. Is it by identity?
No, not yet. Just a perception. It has to be ultimately identity, but I can see what is, I'm seeing you, but I can perceive what is really is going on in your head.
No more deceived by form.
Yes, exactly. Go deeper than the surface. That is the truth, to see not the power of the form. Because we see the words, we hear the words, or we see the world around us, or we see people. But perception is what is hidden behind the surface. Sometimes the vision of the artist does that, the poet does it. He doesn't see for instance, he may not see the tree, he sees this force or the power of the presence that is embodied in the tree. That kind of vision, which is not superficial. But there is a kind of a wisdom that comes with it. So often we see only what we are capable of seeing. We understand only according to our understanding. A pure perception is free from personal preference, likes, dislikes, opinions, all these are gone. It's totally objective, totally impersonal.
Is possible, excuse me, introspection, like introspection, introspection?
Introspection is within you.
Okay,
Introspection is perception is the world around you also. You can perceive yourself, you can perceive others, you can perceive the world, you can perceive. If I see the sky, I may see a sky, I may see a cloud. I perceive maybe an artist, God, who has shaped those clouds. You say there is a force that has made the clouds look like this today. I'm not just seeing the cloud, I'm seeing something that is at work behind. Therefore there is an element of knowledge, of wisdom, not only vision, surface vision. Otherwise, often you perceive also what you want to perceive. I see you, I like you, so I can't see what needs to be changed in your being, because I say you are a good person, you don't have anything wrong inside your being. That is not a pure perception. A pure perception is free from preference, free from preconditioned or preconceived ideas. It is nothing. To be able to be totally objective. I can see myself. Usually it's very difficult to see yourself without any personal, you might say, to be totally objective about yourself. But it is very necessary. And then there is no pain. We stop there.